Welcome to the first event of our Virtue Lab Fall Fuel Series. We host this annual event as an opportunity to bring together future-focused leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, the inventors, the investors who are all out there tackling the climate crisis and other environmental issues. So today, as you've seen and hopefully joined for, this is all about a deeper look into how some of the investors or the inventors and the innovators and entrepreneurs out there have synced up with R&D scientists at the universities and navigated those partnerships in order to launch some of those innovations into the commercial settings. So many of us have seen these examples of partnerships, heard about them, read about them, even when they're 10, 15 years down the line and we're reading about them in the news. We're wondering, how did those even come about? How did they meet each other? Did they meet at a conference? Who found who? And then how did they navigate all of that? So even my work prior to joining Virtue Lab, or we were Oregon Best at the time when I joined about 8 years ago, I saw this when I was studying chemistry and material science in the various ways that folks within the university system were spinning out and were meeting up with folks. So, and then joining up with our organization and working inside and behind the scenes of seeing, especially from the Virtue Lab perspective, seeing how we're supporting those entrepreneurs and bridging and helping them navigate those relationships. I've got to meet people like my co-host that's going to come on here soon, Mandy. And it's a really, really awesome opportunity for those brilliant minds to come together, those with business sense, with the idea, with the innovation, to marry that with R&D, with the scientists that have the equipment, the laboratories at the universities. They can leverage funding that sometimes isn't available to the other ones. Again, the equipment, there's a lot of mentorship that can happen. So it's a really, really great opportunity to bring those relationships together, which is a perfect segue to Mandy, my co-host, Mandy Geller, who I have got to know the last couple of years throughout being supporters in this ecosystem and working with the university. And side note, thank you to University of Oregon for year after year being a sponsor of this event and just a general supporter of Virtue Lab. So Mandy, hi. Mandy is making big ideas happen. And she's doing this at University of Oregon in the Innovation Partnership Services Office, where she's their Senior Innovation Asset Administrator. We'll talk a little bit more about what Mandy does there. So Mandy is also the co-founder and co-lead of the Women's Innovation Network, which is a collaboration actually with Onward Eugene. Shout out to Caitlin there. Love that. Last year was their first year launching that, and can't wait for next year already. And if you look at her LinkedIn, part of that description, she says she loves the liminal space. And I didn't know what that word meant. I love fancy words, but it is a perfect word. We'll throw the definition in the chat there, but totally same, I get it. And it's a perfect way, that totally describes you and the space that I've seen that you've worked in. So I'm obviously a fan of her, but it's not just me. You've made great impressions in your community. You were actually part of the 20 under 40 rising business stars in the Eugene area Chamber of Commerce this year, actually, 2022. We're still in it, right?
We're still in it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's flying by. But, and then you also got the Campus Innovator of the Year as Outstanding Officer of Administration. So, oh my gosh, high five, right? You've been rocking it.
Yes, this is such a humbling introduction. I have done these things, yes.
Yeah, all right. Well, cool. Well, thank you for joining me. I couldn't think of a better person to actually co-host this with, to where I can kind of help come at this with the Virtue Lab perspective of really supporting, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, that piece. And then you have that really behind the curtain experience within the university. So you'll be able to highlight some things in here that are, it's black hole for me. So let's talk about you a little bit more, but in the context of, what you do, what is Senior Innovation Asset Manager, or I'm sorry, Administrator? And
it is,
yeah. I know
it's a mouthful of a title. Yeah, I usually don't even tell people my title because they're like, what is that?
Well, I had to look it up even if our time together. I was like, wait, we know each other just as people, but yeah, what are we called? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So my role at the university is to track and manage the university's intellectual property, everything from helping faculty disclose their research inventions or things, processes that might have commercial potential, to maintaining the university's compliance with federal reporting, specifically under the Bayh-Dole Act, which matters for SBIRs as well. And we'll probably get into some of those tech transfer operations in a little bit. I also help craft what we call project rules agreements to internally manage IP rights, making sure that everyone is on the same page about what a project is doing and what might be happening downstream. And Trisha, as you mentioned, I also am co-leading the Women's Innovation Network that supports, on the university side, faculty, postdocs, and graduate students as they navigate gender-based barriers to bring their research to market. And then on the non-university side, supporting entrepreneurs who are in our community as they launch and sustain their businesses. So when you asked me to join you for this event, I was super excited. I love the public-private partnership space. It is like the quintessential liminal space where a lot of magic happens. And so I'm super excited to talk with our panelists today and hear a little bit about their stories and how they made that magic happen.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll get into more of the detail as to how, again, your role and how the university kind of intersects with folks like, David and Alexa that we're going to talk to here. So let's go ahead and get in. So we have a couple folks, again, as you saw, joining us. First of which is David Birchfield, CEO and president of Birch Energy. And so David is actually from the Portland area. Most everybody's gonna be from the Pacific Northwest. When I started recently hearing about Birch Energy, probably in this last year in different settings, and especially kind of in the world of the federal funding that we help support folks with getting. And he was a recipient of that as well. But I reached out to David to get to know him more and said, let's get together for lunch. But you pick, let's meet in this general area. And he picks barbecue, which is like super awesome. I mean, I think it was a first for having a barbecue business lunch date. But we sit down and we're both like skimming over the menu for a while. And I think we're both kind of stalling. And then we end up saying like, we're both trying to stick to this keto stuff, and which then we ended up forming this friendship sort of in that of, oh, this is what I get, or this actually looks good. And this is kind of friendly. So that was, that sort of started a special bond that we had there. But so your background, so you went to PSU and then OIT, engineering. Was a lot of that part. And then you got into energy analysis. And then what kind of stood out to me, some of, through all of this is the teaching and the stewardship of prioritizing clean energy in communities that are typically marginalized and underserved. And, that's such a special space and place to take up. And then seeing all of the teaching that you have done, either in that level, that work, but also you've done a lot of like GED education and fulfillment that I saw like with Mercy Corps, which is super awesome. Plus you've taught some engineering courses. And then in that story, about 5 years ago, you founded Birch Energy and then kind of developed this building lens company also too, or renamed into that. So you've been busy. Where did this, so maybe kind of back up a few steps, like what inspired you? And then kind of take us through, like, where did Birch Energy come from? And then you connected with the University of Oregon Energy Building Services Lab. So how did that all happen? Where did that come about?
Well, it's a great question. And just to be human right now. My heart is really thumping. So I'm I'm enjoying. I enjoyed everything you said, Tricia. So I appreciate that, all the accolades. Again, I'm David Birchfield, and I am the president of Birch Energy Services. And we formed in 2017, like you talked about, Tricia, and we kind of flailed around for 3 years trying to find projects and contracts. But our drive to really affect the clean energy economy never left us. The rocket fuel that put us into orbit for Birch Energy came from Nexent, which is now Resource Innovations and still one of our partners. So with that, we got into energy efficiency, working with the Energy Trust of Oregon, and our growth was spurred by the contracts we won with our partners, which are TRC, Clear Result, and Energy 350 for the Energy Trust of Oregon program management contracts. So all of that started in 2020 when I was the first employee, and now we have 17 employees. Birch Energy's vision is to normalize racial inclusivity in the clean energy economy while mitigating the effects of climate change. We live at the cross section of the clean energy economy and climate justice. And the whole Birch Energy team is aligned on this vision. And I think that what really differentiates us. It's the why we do what we do. The how and what we do evolves through our beliefs, and it's continuing to evolve. It's accountability, data-informed decisions, integrity, and then also the triple bottom line: people, planet, profit, and in that order. The what we do is straightforward: mechanical engineering, energy efficiency engineering, as well as general contracting. But the beginning and nexus of Building Lens started back in 2020 when we teamed up with a nonprofit and the University of Oregon to apply for the inaugural PCEF grant. Our project for the inaugural PCEF grant centered around energy efficiency and clean indoor environments. Our purpose was to prove that we could save energy, improve indoor air quality, and reduce the risk of transmission for COVID-19 all at the same time. We're in the final stage of finishing up the retrofits in our first building, and early indicators are very promising. So through the PCEF project, we met Mark Fretz from the U of O, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with Mark Fretz. Later on in 2020, I reached out to Mark and asked if they would partner on an STTR grant. And that's when I was introduced to Kevin Van Dan Weimlenberg. It's a hard name to say, but I love Kevin. Kevin and I met, we talked about the idea. He said, let's do it, David. And we won that grant too. And what made Kevin a wonder to work with was that you could tell that he really loved what he does and he really wants to make a difference. The STTR grant was a project we called CAMS, the Clean Air Management System. From a high level, we look at weather data, public health data, interior indoor air quality data, and air quality, and do air quality a threat analysis. Then if a threat is detected, we implement one or more of our 6 algorithms directly to the building management system with the sole intention of prioritizing the health of the occupant. During implementation, U of O introduced safe air spaces, one of their designs and methodologies to assess the risk of COVID in an interior space. And through safe air spaces was a more elegant way to produce one of our algorithms. And now we're in the process of working with the IP transfer office of U of O to really put that intellectual property into our software stack. Also, during the STTR grant, we reached out to a former colleague of mine. His name is Paul Bursch, and to help us design the software. I've known Paul for 10 years. We worked at Northright together. He was the chief technical officer, and I was only an energy analyst. Paul and I both participated in Northright's successful exit. Bursch and Paul made a deal, and we formed Building Lens, a cloud-based monitoring and management software as a service that prioritizes human health to save energy. CAMS is now a part of Building Lens, and we call CAMS Air Lens. So at Building Lens, we believe the key in saving energy isn't automation, it isn't limitation, or even technology. It's you, it's people. And currently we have 3 pilot sites, and we're releasing the full beta version of Airlens in 2023. We're looking for partners to co-create, help us make this impact, and really bring the clean energy future into our economy at the crossroads of clean energy and climate justice. And that's who we are.
I love that. David, every time that we talk, I learn so much more that I'm like, I didn't hear that before, but obviously we just need to keep sitting down, and things keep changing. I mean, you're in a very dynamic space. Like, it's just constantly new stuff coming up. So congrats for all the traction and the work that you're doing. And I can't wait to keep working with you. So thanks for that intro. We're going to pause for a little bit. We're going to get to know Alexa next, and then we'll bring you back up and talk to you both a little bit more. So Alexa is our next panelist that we want to bring up here. So Alexa Benars of EcoShelter. Alexa's actually up in the Tacoma, Seattle area where we had met up there. And Alexa has been just from the intro that I gave, obviously you can hear all of this work and traction that she's getting, but to know her more as a person has been really awesome too, just kind of outside the entrepreneurship and founding space. But you love connecting people and bringing everybody together. So congrats on your STTR phase 2 that you recently got. High five on that. Your background, so you've been at University of Washington. You were communications at the School of Business there, and then went on after that to actually for your master's. And then you were 7 years with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Super awesome, which I think you'll probably talk a little bit more about how that sort of led to some of the influence of what you're doing. But in all of that, about 5 years ago, kind of like David, 2017-ish, it sounded like you founded EcoShelter, where you're changing how the world builds. And we'll hear more about, I guess, that technology. But in there, you teamed up with Vikram Yadana at the WSU Composite Materials and Engineering Center. And so let's maybe hear a little bit more, kind of like David, backing up in just your development through education, working with the foundation. Like, what inspired you? What did you see out there to develop the roofing material that you're developing now?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Tricia. Super happy to be here. And I just wanted to add one thing. So I actually don't have a master's degree, and I bring that up just because I think I never thought that I would be able to be like an NSF recipient with only a bachelor's degree, but it's certainly possible. And I think, it wouldn't be possible without like the partnerships that we were able to develop. But I just wanted to highlight that for like anyone who, thinks it's a really daunting process or that they don't have what it takes. So yeah, as you mentioned, my background prior, so in undergraduate, I studied communication and business and always been a bit entrepreneurial in nature, but I was really interested in international development. And I ended up going on to work at the Gates Foundation after college and worked in global health. And I ended up spending 7 years there. And I became really interested through just kind of my own curiosity and research at kind of the intersection of housing and the built environment and how that impacted health. So that became just an area I became really interested in. I had the opportunity to live and work for our office in India for about 6 months when I was at the Gates Foundation. And when I was there, I began to kind of realize and notice the building materials in a lot of low-income areas were usually a sheet of corrugated metal. I became very interested in like the roof. I kind of jumped right in from building materials to roof, but I became really interested in what people were using as their roof. That was a really big pain point for a lot of people. It's one of the most important elements of a shelter, and the materials that were affordable and available were usually a sheet of corrugated metal. or asbestos cement sheets are still really commonly used in India and other South Asian countries. And it just seemed to me like these materials obviously are not the best performance. There's health concerns, and they also are really high embodied carbon. And so I became interested in what kinds of solutions existed that could be applied to the global roofing challenge. And I came across a product that was developed in India over 10 years ago. It was a bamboo roofing composite, and it met a lot of market criteria, and I thought it had potential. So first step, I was like, why don't we try piloting this, see how it performs, and if there would be a way we could commercialize or improve this product and kind of use it as a prototype. So we did a bit of crowdfunding, and I entered some business pitching competitions with the idea, and we took kind of prize money to do some early pilots, and have been learning a lot, from that over the past few years. But I identified technical challenges with the product. And because my background is not in engineering, I really needed to find people with expertise in natural fiber composite engineering. I was stumped for a little while and didn't know how to move forward, but an advisor kind of suggested, let's see what universities are in the area with this expertise and see if we can find someone to answer some of these questions that I had. So we found Washington State University and someone with a background who seemed relevant. And I sent a cold email and said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Could I hop on a call with you and ask you a few questions? And the person I reached out to said, this is really similar to something my colleague Vikram Yadama, who's a professor there, was working on. And so he said, I'm going to connect you too. And yeah, I hopped on a call with him. I explained what we were doing. He had explained some previous work they had done that we thought could be applied to a bamboo composite. And about a month later, me and my advisor, we took a trip over to Pullman. It's about a 5-hour drive from Seattle. And went to visit their lab and facilities and talked more about the scope of work of what we would want to do or test. And my advisor had experience with NSF, SBIR, and STTR awards. And so we decided, okay, let's try to put in a proposal. So we put in a proposal in about a month and a half or two. We ended up getting a phase 1 award. And so that was in 2019. And obviously there was delays with COVID, but we wrapped that up and then applied for our phase 2, which we just received earlier this year. So that's kind of, I guess, the origin story and kind of how we came into partnership with Washington State University and their Composite Material Engineering Center.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Mandy's computer froze up, so she'll be coming back on at some point here. But thanks for that context. And actually, let's, David, if you want to go ahead and we'll get you back up here to chat with us. But I guess, so just to kind of highlight some of the different funding opportunities that you both have explored. So if you can kind of back up, and again, David, maybe talk about the ones, or just highlight again, top level, some of the ones that you got and that you mentioned, and maybe any other resources for funding that that you maybe wanted to pass along to folks to look at.
Sorry about that. I was muted. So yeah, we got the STTR grant, and one thing about that grant is the support that they give you if you're a first-time grant writer, and that's the Department of Energy. We had a really good helper on the grant who showed us all of the, I guess you can say, the methodology to apply to the grant and what's really important. And then the content came from U of O and Birch Energy. So that process was critical in us winning. So that's one part, that's one grant that we received. And then when we worked with the nonprofit and participated in the Portland Clean Energy Fund, that was another grant that we received that is Portland Clean Energy Fund is aimed at improving the life and getting more Black and Indigenous people of color involved in the clean energy economy in the city of Portland, passed by a majority of Portland. So that really spurred our innovation as well. So I believe that those two pathways in my current, I guess you can say, ecosystem are good pathways to make impact and get your technology to market.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, just a great point to really kind of bring out is in this really early stage, again, the university resources, these grant programs that are out there, the federal funding to be able to support innovation and entrepreneurship, like through the SBA and DOE. These are all things to navigate. And I'm maybe a little silent plug for Virtue Lab and for some of my other peers that are out there. You know, this is what we help find in the space that and where these resources exist potentially. So Alexa, kind of same thing for you. You have kind of some different ones in your background too that are grants and like pitch prizes and things like that. So just maybe super high level, just bullet point those out for folks.
Yeah, I wish I knew that Virtue Lab is then, you know, the STTR program existed earlier, but I kind of got started in a pretty scrappy way. I entered a business pitching competition. I think we won like about $6,000, which we used to kind of do our first pilot site. And then from that, I did a crowdfunding campaign and through a 501c3 fiscal sponsor, a nonprofit who helped us to do that. So we got donations and crowdfunded to do a larger pilot in India. And then that kind of gave us some good traction. I got kind of small grants from other private foundations. And then, the big one was when we got the STTR phase 1 and now the STTR phase 2. So I'd say it's kind of been a snowball effect, kind of starting really small, but each little round, I think, gave us more and more credibility and, you know, made it easier to get the next phase.
Yeah, perfect. And I know both of you, like when we had talked, I love hearing about, and this might go back to kind of that liminal phase that, again, we're going to reference over and over for Mandy, but in these early stages, there's always kind of that tipping point of where you're all in. And Alexa, I know you kind of talked about when we chatted, it was really around that phase 1 that you really were able to just kind of jump into that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but I'd also be curious to hear David. I don't think we really captured like what that tipping point was for you.
Yeah, my phase 1 coincided really nicely with kind of my transition. I had been building it kind of on the side, you know, in my free time while still working at the Gates Foundation for a couple years. And then, around that time we had gotten, you know, our larger pilot funded. So I knew I was going to need to really transition to be more full-time focused on that. And then my first week was when I got my first week full-time at EcoShelter was when I got official notice of our phase 1 award. I was keeping my fingers crossed, but and of course I knew I needed to be full, like 100% employed by the company to be eligible for that. So I was kind of prepared for that, but that was really my jumping off point.
Cool. David, curious.
I got a story. I got to tell you a story. So Birch Energy Services was founded by me, Kwasi Boateng, and Dr. Tishome Juru. In 2020, we were flailing around. I was working at Nexent. And here's an interesting story. Jacob James was my boss at Nexent. And he came to me and said, David, why don't you go out and start your own company? Then we'll partner with you on the Energy Trust existing buildings program, and we'll see if we can win it together. And resourcing Nexent would give you an actual contract, and you'll be actually on your own. And the hair on my back stood up because I was ready. And so, like the moral of the story is, stay ready so you don't got to get ready. In 2020, April 1st, right in the midst of the pandemic, was my first day as the sole employee of Birch Energy Services. And I was able to get paid a couple months later, but that was my jumping off point where I was all in.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both actually for kind of just diving into that detail a little bit. I think it's important, for folks to hear, that it just doesn't happen overnight, So, but to get kind of into this bit about how the partnership came together, curious to learn a little bit more, and this gets into Mandy's world a bit more too, is what were some of the first agreements that you had to get in place, the hoops you had to jump through? You both kind of alluded to some of this in your intros, who you connected, but what was more the details there? And maybe we'll start with Alexa. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I would say that me and my co-PI, we kind of jumped in on the proposal development straight away, maybe because we were under such a tight time crunch. Then I remember we got a draft cooperative research agreement from Washington State University. So they provided that. And then I brought in one of my advisors who had more experience commercializing technology and kind of knew what to look for in that. And he spent some time with me to kind of go through it and understand it, and figure out, which things we wanted to ask for and what was important, like on fields of use or ability to sub-license, things like that. So I think for the phase one, all we had to do was submit a draft cooperative research agreement. And I think we finalized it and signed it right before we got official notice of award. But other than that, I would say we kind of jumped in and started working on it, right away. And yeah, I guess it was a little bit of a formality. Important though, like a lot of what is included in there. So I think having an advisor, someone helped me know what I was looking at, and was really valuable.
Cool. And then David, you've shed a lot of light already kind of on some of that process, but do you have any extra detail you wanted to kind of add as far as, the particular agreements or that you needed to sort out?
Well, our interaction formed from an authentic interaction previous to the TTR grant. So Kevin and I, we went on faith. We said, let's get this done. We'll get the paperwork. We'll get things in. Let's get moving. Do I recommend that? Probably not. But, time crunch, we had to get things done. But at the end of the day, there are some contracts and stuff that you have to walk through. And for an STTR grant, at a minimum, they involve the prime agreement. So the prime award from the DOE, which includes all the flow downs from the DOE, which is very confusing. You need a lawyer. The scope of work, describing the work, the budget, allocation of rights of the intellectual property, and then any license agreement that you might be working on for background IP. And we're actually doing that with the Safe Air Spaces, working with the U of O, making sure that we include that intellectual property in our in building lens. So do I recommend it? No, but the authentic, chaotic partnership that we formed really produced this. So I wouldn't change a thing.
Awesome. Yeah. And Mandy, I'll kind of invite you at this point, to sort of jump in. This is, from your perspective.
I think that authentic connection that both David and even Alexa kind of pointed to as well is really important. You have to really know the faculty member that you're going to be working with. And as David shared, working out the IP ahead of time, outlining any background intellectual property, what the university faculty member has maybe done in the past, outlining what the private company has done in the past so that each knows what they're bringing to the table, and then determining what would happen with new jointly created intellectual property. How is that going to be managed? Who is going to have the rights to do what? And I think working that out ahead of time is super important. And it is that's like the dating phase, right? Like you'll get to know some of the administrators at the university, and you'll get to know the faculty member a lot better. The private company on the university side, we'll get to know the private company a little bit better, and you kind of work out how you're going to work together, and start laying the foundations for really solid communication. So one of the kind of recommendations for these partnerships between university and industry is enhanced communication that you might not be used to. So I know on the private industry side, it's normal to do kind of weekly work sprints, weekly check-ins. That is unusual for some university folks. So bringing that to the table of like, hey, we'd like to do this weekly check-in so that we can make sure we're all on the same page. You might have to bring that to them. And sorting out the timeline. Super important. Industry moves faster than institutions of higher education. They can be a little bit slower and a little bit more thorough, and for good reason, right? Particularly public institutions of higher education, they're stewards of state money. And so you want them to be thorough and a little bit, not necessarily cautious, but conscientious, and recognizing that university might work a little bit faster than they're accustomed to. And on the industry side, things might be a little bit slower than you're accustomed to. And you both have to come to the middle for that.
So this actually brings up a good point that, Mandy, you and I have kind of talked about too. And I guess that I have kind of seen from, the founder, the entrepreneur, CEO kind of space, is that sometimes there is, because of some of those differences and different paces and who's managing what and who's responsible, but sometimes there's some redundancy that one might feel that maybe is being asked. And it's like, why do I have to do this? Like, why is this even important? So of course, that's not University of Oregon ever, right? But anyway, I've heard that this kind of happens. And so how would you suggest that folks maybe navigate that? Or do they just head down and do what's asked?
Yeah. So I always encourage people to lay out, okay, I see this hoop, I'm going to jump through it. And also, can I ask like what the purpose of this particular document is? And mostly for your own edification, but also if you point out those redundancies in a kind way, you might make things better later on down the road for other companies trying to work with that particular university. We're always looking at process improvement. So having that feedback is helpful, that something seems redundant to the private industry partner. We are so much in our work every day and we see the reason behind something. But kindly pointing out, you have a hoop here and we don't know why this is here and we'll jump through it, but you might want to consider why this hoop is here for the next person. Improves the flow and the ecosystem for everyone.
Yeah, sometimes, I think with all of us that do kind of programming in different ways, there's sort of processes that we inherit that end up being kind of old and outdated, that sometimes change and can be met by a different need potentially, or an existing resource or document that's already out there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, more to come later. We've talked a lot about STTR and SBIR grants in this federal grant. So we do want to kind of shed a little bit more light on that in particular. So we'll hit pause on some of the tech transfer and university partnerships because this federal funding is such a big, just catalytic group of grants that can really help, as you've heard, transition, these technologies into commercial markets. So I do want to invite my colleague Leon up. And Leon and I have worked together for about 8 years now in this space of being able to offer federal funding assistance in grant writing assistance to folks out there. And Leon's been doing this actually for about 10 or so years of helping people. And he's got a background in chemical engineering, spent quite a lot of time with Hewlett Packard in R&D. He's out of the Oregon area, like me, likes hiking with his dog, and which is something that we always talk about, but also has some kids that are flying the nest and in college. So very, very busy life between work and home. Leanne, do you want to tell us a little bit more about SBIR and especially the STTR funding?
Yeah, thanks, Trisha, and hello to all of the attendees at this first Fuel event of 2022. As mentioned, I'm Leon Wolf, and I am with Virtue Lab, your event host. I'm the Federal Funding Assistance Manager, and you've heard a lot about one particular form of federal assistance for startups and small businesses today, namely SBIR and STTR. And it was put in the chat, but I'll tell you again that those acronyms are Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer, which is the specific thing you've heard a lot about. These are two programs that total over $4 billion of federal grants and contracts directly for startups, not to universities, in order to help grow innovative technologies and keep the US competitive. And the program's been around for over 40 years. I'm pleased to announce that as of late last night, the Senate reauthorized the program with 9 days left for the next 3 years. It was getting really kind of dicey and nerve-wracking, but we will have that $4 billion again for the next 3 years to help small businesses like David's and Alexa's grow their innovative technologies. So what's this program all about? Well, basically, the government is giving seed money to a small business to move a technology from a basic research stage, including those in universities or might be at that sort of academic research level, and move it into the form of a usable product or commercializable technology that basically can be brought to market and grow good jobs and good revenue in the US. The SBIR program is the larger program we won't talk much about today. And STTR, the Small Business Tech Transfer, is basically a subset of that with pretty much the same rules and regulations. And it's only about $500 million, if that can be said to be a small amount of money. But it is a specific vehicle for working with a university. You don't have to have a university involved, although you can with SBIR. With an STTR like David's and Alexa's, you have to have that university collaboration. You don't necessarily have to have IP with the university. There are no real rules beyond other than the involvement itself of the university. Usually it's a university spinoff. Sometimes a faculty member will actually be leaving the university in order to go with the company. And very often, I'd say 90% of the cases, there is also university IP to negotiate with an office like Mandy's, but these aren't the federal government's requirements. So just a few more basics. The money, as Alexa and David both mentioned in phase one, is really critical to helping people leave their day jobs. It's generally around $200,000 to $200,000. But then you can move on to a phase two grant, which Alexa and EcoShelter has just recently received with an agency like NSF that was over $1 million. Only 6 agencies, including NSF and Department of Energy, like David's grant, have STTR programs. Of course, there's others like the Department of Defense. But once you get that $1 million, you're pretty much expected to then bring the innovation via the small businesses resources to market. The government pretty much doesn't provide any funding after that $1.2 million. So if all this seems pretty complicated, don't panic. Please contact me or our URL at Virtue Lab and apply online. If you are a small business or a researcher thinking about applying for SBIR or STTR, there are a lot of resources to help. David and Alexa mentioned some of them, and Virtue Lab also provides detailed assistance with grant writing, navigating the maze of federal rules and regulations, and even making some of those intros to help manage your university relationships. So again, thanks to all the participants and attendees out there in cyberspace. I think we do have a minute or two if anybody wants to put a question in chat, but otherwise I'll turn it back to Mandy and Trisha to keep things moving along.
Some of it too, Leon, I wanted to, if anything came up while you heard more about Alexa and David that's maybe specific or that you wanted to touch on a little bit more that's STTR related. I mean, you hit some, but.
Sure, I wasn't sure we had time, but yeah. And so basically, as Alexa and David have indicated, the process of working with an academic PI is often kind of complicated. it sounded like both of your PIs or both of your university leads had some good industry experience. But if there are any tips and tricks you have for our listening audience about what went well in that relationship, and maybe advice on what you would do differently if you had to do it over again, I'd love to turn it back over to one or both of you. Alexa or David, which one of you wants to go first?
I'm happy to take that one. So I've been thinking about this one for a while, since last night, and I think it's from a foundational set point, is that from the business side, we're all about application and adding value to society, getting people to want our technology and to install it and to like it and for it to add value to their lives. Universities is all about discovery. So having that mindset and understanding our perceptions from the gate, I think, is a good way to start a conversation. If I had to go back, that's the way I would start it. And let's start working through how are things interpreted differently through my lens and through the university's lens. And I think that is the foundation of a good relationship with the university.
That's great, David. Thanks. And I would add customer discovery and understanding the customer need in the market is kind of the key thing to help bridge that gap and move forward in a commercialization space. Alexa, do you want to? Yeah, go ahead and take a stab.
I was going to say that too. I think things that have been really helpful is one that Mandy had brought up earlier is we have kind of a weekly check-in between myself and then our postdocs and my co-PI at the university. So that was kind of a cadence I set up to make sure that things move forward and we're making progress each week. I think that a challenge with university is, there's a lot of projects, and so yours can easily fall to the bottom if you're not kind of managing that relationship and keeping, your tasks top of mind and kind of having those check-ins, I think is really important. And I agree with what you said as too, Leon. I think I've tried to bring my co-PI in. We've done site visits together. Even when he was back in India visiting family, I brought him along on a lot of customer discovery to really understand, what are the challenges with climate and what are the challenges that end users face, and, how can we design the product, and sharing a lot of those with our postdocs as well, I think helps people to see beyond just the some of the technical small things right there, but to really understand like how we need to design this for also the market fit, and how do we need to design it for cost and to go into production, and some of these other things. I think it's not necessarily how people are always trained to think in a university setting, but I think can be a really great collaboration, but definitely just takes understanding, I think, on both sides.
Thanks, Alexa.
Mandy, anything you want to add from your perspective?
I want to say ditto to everything that Alexa and David have shared, because they've really hit the nail on the head. It's about communication. It's about having conversations up front before you get somewhere, and making sure that everyone is moving in the same direction.
Perfect. Yeah. So one of the questions in a couple ways came up in our chat, and actually want to kind of take it to that a little bit. And somebody was asking about finding PIs or researchers within the university that really can. How do they go about finding these folks? And so Mandy, you had replied in the chat, so folks are welcome to take a look there. But do you want to go ahead and just elaborate on what your reply was there and your suggestion?
Sure. So every university has a technology transfer office. The goal of that office is to take innovations and research and bring them, help shepherd that into the market for public good. So that office is your connector. They are the door from the university to private industry and vice versa. And so reach out to them. They want to help you. They have a mandate actually to do so. And we want to be supportive of the work that you all are trying to do. We just might not know you. So reach out to the Technology Transfer Office at a university that has a program that is strong in your industry sector. So I think that there was a question about horticulture. So I would reach out to Oregon State, for example, and connect with them and see what they have. There is also a website, I dropped the link in the chat, that has technologies that are available for licensing from all public institutions in Oregon. So everyone contributes what's available for licensing to that website. Even if you don't see something that you could use, that website lists who the faculty researchers are. So if you see something that's maybe like right next door to the space you're working in, you can see that researcher, you can reach out to them, ask for coffee, a 15-minute Zoom introduction, and kind of see where things go. And I think those are two great places to start.
And Leon, all your time getting to know folks and working with people, I mean, you've seen a lot of different partnerships come together and how they probably met. Anything that you want to add as far as a resource there?
Yeah, there's no two relationships are alike, and every situation that I've dealt with has some unique relationships. Sometimes the academic researchers will want to stay with the university. Sometimes they want to be CEO for a little while, but intend to rotate back once the company gets too big. So there's no specific tips or tricks, because you have to kind of adapt to one of the any of the unique circumstances. But one of the things I would augment what Mandy has already said is that very often a university will have an accelerator, a program that NSF sponsors called I-Core, which is short for Innovation Core. Other programs like Lens of the Market, and at least I know that both WSU, UW, UO, and Oregon State all have pretty robust involvement with those programs. And I'd urge any small businesses or simply researchers that are on the phone seeking to bring their commercial product or bring a technology to market through a commercial route, that you take advantage of those resources, which are usually free at the university, to do more customer discovery, to kind of figure out product market fit, and really to, in some cases, even get some expert consulting on the industry and how to form a startup and do some of that more business-oriented things that might not be first nature to scientists. So I could speak for hours on this subject, and I'd love to see some of the attendees out there in cyberspace in the future. So I put a link in the chat about all of our services. Even if you're just trying to do a funding opportunity analysis, just feel free to apply online and check that out in the chat, or put any other questions in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. I would expand again. Leon and I are riffing off each other here. Keep reaching out to people. Don't get discouraged if you don't hear back right away. Universities do have a slower pace, and so you will see that in the communications. I'll drop my email in the chat as well. If you feel stuck or you're not sure where to start, send me an email. I'm happy to connect you to people who are working in the space that you are, and make some introductions if I can, or I might be like 2 degrees away from something, and I can introduce you to someone who can introduce you to someone. And that's where you kind of start building that network and where those collaborations can kind of grow from.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of like LinkedIn groups too that, bring clusters of folks together. It's a really great way to just kind of, even within it, you can search through, the university contacts there, and usually they're surfacing so much. And I know that there's been a ton of information and lots of acronyms thrown out there. We're capturing that. We're going to follow up here, within the next week or so, with kind of just kind of a recap of all those words, acronyms that were thrown out, terms, links, all of that. So if you didn't write fast enough or didn't capture things from the chat, we'll capture that for you and get that to you. But we'll kind of start to wind things down a little bit. So we've covered a bit. I don't know, David and Alexa, if you have any last tips, resources that you want to throw out. If anything, I will ask kind of, what are you doing what's next in the next 6 months, year? You said it a little bit earlier, but what do you need? What resources, people?
Yeah, I think for us right now, we're just ramping up on our phase 2. So we are doing, the research and development to get our product ready for market. Right now, I'm really deep in production planning and, doing all the costing and modeling to figure out, what we need in terms of investment to go into production. And so I'm preparing for, hopefully we'll have our first seed round early next year. So that's kind of where I'm at. And in terms of anything to share, I think, I think other people have said it, but, don't wait and just try to go forward. I think, you'll figure it out as you go, and it kind of will evolve a little bit organically. I've found working with like a smaller university also to be really beneficial for us. They've been really flexible, and I think kind of let us kind of lead the way on a lot of things and kind of drive, which has been really great. And I think that's about all I have.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Alexa, for contributing your time and insights to everybody here. David.
I would say for next year, we're ramping up on a lot of the work we have with the Energy Trust of Oregon, and in inflicting our vision into Energy Trust and helping disrupt some of the unequitable practices and make it more equitable. And we're looking for impact investors that want to participate with us in our new vision, which is to prioritize healthy, equitable, and efficient communities with building lands. So if you're looking for a good cause, please reach out.
Thank you. And again, thank you, David, for your time and your insights and just sharing this energy with all of us. So, Mandy, thanks for joining me and adding all the context that you've added. I'd hoped that, that when we came together to co-host this in a virtual setting, that it would feel just as natural a bit as, as we would host something in person. So it worked. Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Yes, totally. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. And thank you to Virtue Lab and David and Alexa for the work that you all are doing to make our communities a better place to be.
And thanks to Leon for joining us as well and leading us through all the acronyms of SBIR, STTR, and everything that those grants have to offer. So we'll follow up with a kind of a recap of this event and everything that was out there. And if in the meantime, if we didn't answer some things, be sure and reach out to either myself or anyone that's offered up their insights. And
thank you for the opportunity in this event.
Yeah. You are welcome. All right. Well, next Wednesday, we have our next Fuel event. So we hope to see you there. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.